everybody, and welcome to episode 6, season 1. I always get that backwards. Of No Strings, Just Candor, and I'm super excited about today's episode because I happen to have somebody that was a huge impact on my career, and she happens to be my first guest speaker, so it all ties beautifully. And I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I'm so nervous. I didn't know we were diving right in. This is so exciting. My name is Cheryl I know Odette from years back. We worked together for several years and have since, I think, become like total besties. Obviously. We both run in the same circles. We both are deeply involved in the HR space, but also very passionate about the mental health space and very passionate about empowering women and elevating women. So I think that was probably a lot of the reason for this conversation today, right?
It was a very big reason for the conversation, and it ties into why I wanted to start this podcast, like completely.
Yeah.
It was because I wanted to focus on human resources because it's, my passion. It's what I've been doing for a very long time. I wanted to focus on uplifting others and mental health, and I wanted to also focus on, just being able to kind of just lift the veil on a lot of things that are happening and people don't understand. And people are just saying like, oh, this is a good thing in corporate America. And we're just like, no.
It's normal, but it's not.
Normal,
yeah.
But it's not. Exactly. So it's a lot of the reason why I started this podcast, because do I have a set, this is why, and a mission and a vision? Not yet. I'll get there eventually one day. But that's why I also wanted to have you here, because one of the main things that have been kind of popping up recently, especially part of the communities that I've been joining, I've been seeing a lot of women empowerment. And I think that women empowerment is a little bit of a trigger for both of us when we hear women empowerment. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about, let's kind of, I don't want to pop anybody's balloon. Is that what people say? Pop anybody's, like, I don't want to ruin anybody's dreams, but women empowerment is so much more complicated. It's a lot of optics around women.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people saying things and not a lot of people understanding what that actually means.
Exactly. Yeah. So throughout my career, another main reason I wanted you here was because I think when I started working with you, it was the first time that I was kind of taken back, that I didn't almost have to be like, oh no, she's a female leader. She's my supervisor. Is she going to hate me? Is it going to be catty? Is it going to be gossipy? Is it going to be like all of these things? So I had already experienced some of that before. So meeting you when we were at the same company and you being my supervisor, it was kind of like, oh no, we can be friends. We can both actually be successful and effective in this company without any type of animosity, without any type of competition,
like jealousy. Well, I don't know how to attribute that, but I do know that so much of it came from you coming in and having a set of strengths that I did not have. So your skill set was completely complementary to mine, and I felt like you were such an asset to me, and I could not have been successful in any way if you weren't there. And so that was helpful. I've also just never been the type of woman who looks at another woman and thinks we are going to head heads for this. For me, it's, I want this role or I don't. It doesn't matter if it's not me versus you. So I don't know if that's just the way that I was brought up. I just don't know. I don't have that in me, that internal competition.
I don't think I have that either, to be honest. When I look at other women, my first thought is, how can I help you?
Yeah.
How can I support you? How can I get you further than, and I never think about it as, well, I'm here and I don't want them to surpass me.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to help them. It's more of like, cool, I really want to help people. I really actually want to help you succeed. And
we're finding a lot of women are not like that.
They're not like that.
Yeah.
I was just like, we really need to do something about this. We really need to call this out, because then I made more connections. And when I made more connections, they were telling me they were going.
I feel like it must be happening a lot more than people are talking about. I'm glad that you're calling it out. I have a lot of women in my life, especially in my small circle, who are experiencing the same thing, and they struggle with female leaders that they report into, or female direct reports, which is situation that I've encountered, where it just feels like it's constantly you're against each other, and there's just there's no answer for it. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I just kind of remembered, and I want to kind of jog your memory. when we worked together, you and I had a good relationship.
Yeah.
You and we were good teamwork. We did have another woman in our circle.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, we had another woman in our circle, and it felt like that for me. And I was so scared sometimes to go to you and tell you, like, this is what's happening. Like, I feel that
this person's undermining you.
That's undermining
not taking you seriously.
I mean, as an HR coordinator, and it was I became an HR manager actually because you promoted me. And I think that with this person specifically, it was a lot of competition. There was competition without me realizing that there was a competition.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sabotaging. There was a lot of gossiping. There was a lot of, like, sometimes when you wouldn't show up to work and you were just like, either take a day off or work from home, I would feel so lonely because of the type of culture,
the environment that she
built.
Yeah.
And I think that when, or you were about to go on maternity leave, kind of broke the news and you were like, well, now you're going to be reporting into that. It just escalated so much quicker. Yeah. And I kind of want to hear it from, like, your point, because it wasn't until I remember you calling me into your office and sitting me down and saying, I need to tell you something. And I'm so mad about it. And it was that the person, this woman, had come to you and said, I don't want to report to Odette because I have nothing to learn from her. And it was at the time I did not get my bachelor's. I had nothing. All I had was a high school diploma. And so, I didn't have any of this. And she just straight up told you.
She told me, she was emotional when we had a conversation. And she had mentioned, like, I don't feel like I'm comfortable reporting to this person, because I have a master's degree in HR and she doesn't. And I was like, well, that brings years and years of experience. Like, you have a lot to learn from her. And I got emotional. I started crying when I was explaining this to her because it took me so long to get my bachelor's. I hadn't finished my bachelor's until I was at that job. Like, it took me so long. I had spent so much time working and I felt like no one took that seriously because I didn't have the degree. And so to hear somebody outright say it out loud, I realized what I was then dealing with, that it was a lot of this insecurity about something else. I don't know, maybe other things. And I don't know, it bothered me, and I knew what we were dealing with at that point, that it was unreasonable. It was going to be unreasonable from then on, I think.
Do you remember how I handled it?
No.
So I ended up, when you told me this, I was obviously upset, but not shocked. I think that when you told me this, and I wasn't shocked, you were kind of shocked.
Like, that's on brand. Sounds about right.
Like, you were shocked that I wasn't shocked. And I remember just being like, yeah, like, that's on brand. Like, it's happened before. I've had to defend myself in these situations.
Yeah.
I'm okay. And so I remember asking her and saying, let's go to lunch before, it's official, before you report. And
so we can just kind of, like, break the ice
away. So we could break the ice away. And, like, not to give too many details away, obviously, but it was such a shit show of a lunch.
Yeah. I think you told me this.
It was a shit show. Yeah. There was a lot of crying. But there was no substance to it. There was no, I don't want to report into you because.
Of course.
It was more of, I deserve it. And there was no reason. Because I asked her and I said, okay, well, I know that you're uncomfortable reporting. And I don't want this. I think we both want the same thing, which is to make this company successful.
Yeah.
And I think we could work together. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to like each other, but we definitely have to respect each other. And I think that she started just crying and she's, well, I think I deserve it more than you. And there was no real reason as to why.
Hold on. So she thought she should be your mom.
Yeah. she thought that she should have. And I was like, whatever the reason is, I'm sorry. Like, I worked really hard. I worked my ass off. I've done all of these things. Like, it's not that I sat there and you handed it to me. And that's what she thought, that it was just handed.
There was more. There were additional layers to this that she and I had a conversation prior, because she didn't, I think, like your fashion or something, which is wild.
Like, why?
and then had made a comment, I think, about in an interview at one point, somebody had a thick accent. A candidate had a thick accent. She called that out. And so there were these signals that I was getting that I'm not sure if she quite understands what we're doing here. I think we called into question here the gender, like might your being a female have had to do with like if you had been a male and I said this person's now going to be your boss, would she have reacted the same way? I don't know.
Yeah.
For her, I think there were a lot of layers, and maybe since then she's grown a lot, and you want to believe that, like, you know, she's doing really well, and we hope that for her, obviously.
I hope that she is doing really well. And
she's early in her career in that way, right?
It's not a fake way. We're not like, okay, like, yeah, let's just go back to being normal and we're not talking shit. Like, no, like, I really hope she's
I genuinely do, yeah. Like, I mean, she's a really sweet person in general, and I think that, like, you want to believe that people grow in their career, and the more confident they become in the value that they can bring, the more they want to lift. So like we're the ones that lift as we climb because we know how hard we fight and scrape to get where we're at as women. And I can only speak as a white woman. Like I can't even imagine how women of color have how many more obstacles they have to push past to get to where they are. So I think a lot of it comes from insecurity. And so when you see someone that looks enough like you, you're like, wait a second, why do they get to be here and I don't?
Has it ever happened to you where you walked into an interview? And it's so funny because we talk about like men, if it was a man, it shouldn't have been a man. Like if it was a man, it would have been different. If it was a man, like all of these things. But I kind of walk in and when I find out that the person that I'm going to be reporting to is a man, I kind of just like, okay. And is that weird? Has that ever happened to you where like you walked in and you'd be like, oh, I'm going to report to a woman?
And I totally said I was going to be diplomatic. When I walked in this door, remember I said to you out there, I was like, I'm going to be so diplomatic. What can I tell you a story, a fun like anecdote? A couple jobs ago, I reported into a female CEO. Looked up to her. She is still, I mean, bright, very sharp lady, very charismatic, super, like just a cool woman in general. But the first project she asked me to do, when I handed it into her and she was looking through the decks with me sitting right next to her, she was like sighing as she was going through it. And I was like, oh God, like she hates it. I know, I can tell. And she looked at me and verbatim said, I don't know what I'm looking at. I just can't believe I have to do your job for you. And it like killed me. I, to this day, sort of have nightmares about it just because I still want her to be proud of me. And she never was. We didn't work out. It was not we didn't end well. And, you know, it wasn't a right fit.
Did I make you proud now? Look at me. I always say that. I'm always like, did I make you? I don't really like you, but did I make you proud?
Say yes, just say yes. But I wonder sometimes if it had been a man that said that to me, would I have felt the same way? And I realized no, because I don't look up to any men. My dad is the most wonderful man I know. He's super smart. No man, I'm saying this to everybody, like no man in the workforce is a model for me. No man knows what it feels like to be in a room and be treated like a secretary because you're a woman. No one's going to look at the man and be like, can you go get the refreshments from the kitchen? No one's going to ask the man, do you mind taking meeting minutes? Never. I've never seen that happen. So like, I don't look at men in power and think, I want to be just like him. Like I literally don't. So this woman, I admired her so much. I wanted to be so much like her. And when she didn't appreciate my work, I was like heartbroken. So I think it hits harder.
It does.
For me, when it's a woman.
So, Ron, I think you bring up a really good point because now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, is it maybe that women kind of misconstrue because I came in and I looked up to you. And like, I looked up to another female leader that we had in that. And out of nowhere, it just, you know, you didn't let me down, but that other person did let me down in a very significant way. It was actually one of like my most pivotal moments in my career. But do you think that women automatically say, okay, I have other women reporting into me, so they immediately hate me? Or do you think it's like reverse?
That's interesting. What I've realized that I think is that I have different expectations for women. And I wonder if women have different expectations from me. So one of my more recent direct reports, I delivered news to my whole team, which all happened to be female. And one of them said to me, I don't like the way you said that. You could have said that differently. I took it personally. She went sideways off the rails with this information. And I was upset because I thought, well, if I was a man and said that, would you have felt any different about the way that I delivered it? And I thought maybe her expectation for me was unreasonable. And did she look at me because I was a woman and expect me to be warm about my delivery or expect me to like sugarcoat it?
Because I think what it's like dawning on me now, like in my last role, I had a team and it was all women. And I remember one of them specifically, I think when I walked into that company, there were so many things that needed fixing. There were so many things that needed to happen that I didn't really quite register the whole women versus women. It just didn't register. Like I kind of was just like, I have to do it. So when things happened and I ended up kind of inheriting the teams that were all women, immediately in my mind wasn't, oh my God, they're out for my job. Immediately my thought was, I was like, are they gonna like me? And then
we're people pleasers too, right? Yeah. So there's that layer.
And I think that there was that part of me, but it was really deep down inside because I knew there was things to do. There was things that I needed to get done. And I think I had to move that side away. Yeah. Like I had to move that emotional side away, but it was also very helpful because I had very different personalities. I had one that had the driest humor. Yeah. And she was actually like my right hand. Yeah. She had the driest humor ever, probably one of the best HR generalists and HR managers and HR professionals that I had the pleasure of working with. She was fantastic, but she was so dry. She was like very cut and dry.
I love that.
And I loved it. But then I had another one who, mind you, I still talk to most of these women. And I had another one who was the definition of sunshine. Yeah. Like she was always happy and peppy. And I think there was one time I had an actual performance call with her. And I turned on the Zoom call and she was wearing like a skincare face mask. and I remember just being like, do I care about this? I was like, no,
you don't care about that.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to her and I'm giving her feedback. The face mask is like slowly falling off. And I'm like, your face mask. She's like, oh yeah, it's time to take it off, but continue. And like, I did it. And then I had another one who was kind of like a weird mix of the other two. So it was very interesting having them all in one room. Yes. Because I couldn't mold into each of them because when I had a one-on-one, I was able to mold. I was able to mask. I was able to just be like, oh yeah, we can
flow. We have figure out a way to be a chameleon.
But when they were all in a room,
who are you then? So this is what I actually hate this. I know that this is like a thing, but like when managers are supposed to just be whatever version of manager that employee needs in that moment, I don't have it anymore. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the mental capacity to do that anymore. I'm going to just actually stop doing it because it's just, you're human. Like, we don't have it.
I don't have it anymore. Like, I think did I message you the other day and I said, I feel like my fucks are like flying out the window? Yeah. Like, that's exactly what's happening. So when I had all of these different personalities, I showed up and I was just like, well, I'm going to be myself.
You have to.
And I'm going to focus on what we have to do. And if they don't like me, they were going to tell me because we're all humans, we're all adults. And if I'm being a good leader, they'll tell me. If I'm being a bad leader, I'll get their feedback.
Good for you.
But I just kind of, it was this moment of just saying, I don't have the time nor energy, nor does this company have the opportunity to stop. Yes. And for me to kind of coddle and
you can't cater to everybody's needs. No, this is a big theme in my life right now is kind of like figuring out who is the right team to move this thing forward, understanding that we're all a little bit different, our strengths are different. And then let's just go instead of worrying about, well, did this person feel okay with this? And how did I treat this? When your last episode of your podcast, I haven't watched it yet. You should watch it. The story you tell about the woman who sent the email and didn't do the like cliche, we expect women are going to be warm in their emails with exclamation points and emojis. And this man who had this like visceral reaction to this, how unfair that she couldn't be in her professional space and be herself and be her best professional self without somebody punishing her. Like, that's unacceptable. And we should feel comfortable doing that.
We should be comfortable as women, showing up fully as ourselves. Yeah. I'm a dry person. Yeah. I'm not a emojis and laughing at LOL,
hugging,
hugging.
Yeah,
dear God,
I know.
I know.
Me. And you can't compliment you. Like nobody can ever compliment her that she.
I'm working through it with my therapist. My therapist is like, you're going to learn. So I'm like, I'm journaling now. I can take some compliments. I really hope a troll doesn't come out and it's like, she doesn't like compliments. Let me destroy her. So that kind of brings me to a question. Do you think that women are so competitive with other women and sometimes really mean because we're tired?
Yes.
Because we're exhausted. We're tired of having to, throughout our career, battle other women and battle men and battle, the fact that some of us are women of color. Sometimes some of us are, different sexual orientation, different things. Like, we're so exhausted constantly. And I think it gets to the point in a career where you're looking around and say, I just want a support system. So, we started this podcast with being like, I'm going to remove the veil because women sometimes fucking suck. They have been truthfully one of the biggest obstacles I've ever had in my career. Every single time I think about a huge obstacle, there has been a woman involved. Or every single time I think about like a feedback comment that wasn't necessarily effective and was mean and just hurt my feelings, like it just continuously. And it's a woman that's saying it, right? It's so many impactful moments in my life that are negative have come from women leaders. And I don't want to do that, but I feel like I'm also exhausted.
You're exhausted. They may be exhausted. Do you think we, as women who typically lift as we climb, because that's our inclination, do you think we hold other women to that same standard unreasonably? Sometimes I wonder if as women, we expect more from each other because we would never hold a man to that standard because we don't really have high expectations for men in that way, right? We don't expect them to be as emotionally intelligent as women typically are. This is really like, yikes.
Yeah. I walk into a room, for example, and I'm like, I assume immediately they don't like me. They think that I'm competing with them. They think that I'm doing this. And like, I really need to change that mindset because the support system that I have, the women that I have surrounding me now are incredible. And the reason why I have them and they're so incredible is because I really did start letting my guard down and just being myself and not being.
It's a filter. Yeah. You filtered out the ones that you were just not going to be there.
That were just not going to be there. But I think it's so hard to do because sometimes they get proven right a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I went to the job interview and I met with certain individuals that were supposed to be reporting into me and they were all women. And I walked in and I said, well, I'm going to let my guard down and I'm going to be
myself.
And I'm going to be myself and I'm going to do this. Could I have done the job that they were hiring for? 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I knew that I was ready. Like, I think I even called you. And I was like, I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
But I didn't know there was a silent competition going on. I didn't know that was happening. And I feel like it caught me so off guard. Because when I walked in, I was like, I think I left that interview and I called Allie and I said, oh my God, I love them so much. They were fantastic to speak to. I think I'm going to do great. And then
there were conversations happening beyond.
There were conversations that I later found out were happening and twisted the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I said, oh no, this is not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
This is not what I felt. And that's why I'm so scared. That's why I'm so scared to sometimes be in front of like women leaders. And I'm like, are you really actually genuinely being nice? Do you actually genuinely care about uplifting me? Or are you just...
That's what's so tricky. I feel maybe men, society has conditioned us to believe that it's okay for men to compete. So they're more forward about their intentions to compete with you. Like they're more open about it, and women, we're not supposed to be that way. Right. Maybe. And so we're secretly doing it, I guess. I don't know. I say we, I don't feel like I'm like that. But then I don't know. I don't know if there have been moments where I've looked at a woman and thought, I should be here and not her. I can't. I feel like I haven't. I hope not. I hope somebody doesn't come out of the woodwork and say,
no, it was that one time.
But I do wonder if there's a lot of society like teaching us or just, somewhere these moments in our lives where we learn like, well, if two men are battling against something, that's okay. We encourage that. But if women are doing it, you got to be really quiet about it. You got to do it sort of in secret.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't like the secrecy. I don't like the secrecy of it because what I've done, if I've met with somebody and I've met with another woman and me and that woman necessarily didn't see eye to eye or get along, all I would do would just be like, I wish the best for you, but you're not someone that I want to be around. We just don't share the same view. I'm just kind of like, you do your best. You go in your corner. You do what you do. Of
course, yeah.
And I'm going to do mine.
We'll all do our thing.
Yeah. And I feel like I necessarily didn't have those when I was starting off in leadership or starting off in just the workspace. I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
I was looking at women that I looked up to so much, and I was like, God, I want to be like them. And this representation, and then those same people would turn around and I would find out that they hated me because they, for some reason, thought that I was not good at the job or they thought that I was like doing this. And I was like, I just want a good role model.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
can't I find a good role model? I don't want a man role model. Like, I don't want that. I want a good woman like, role model that I can just genuinely be myself.
Right.
And then kind of go from there.
It's got to feel like, and if we're boiling it down, there's so many men in positions of power. And so when a woman makes it to the table, gets the seat at the table, that's the only one that they're going to let be there, right? That we've done it. Here's your DEI hire. Like, that's how they feel. And so then it's got to be why we feel like, well, it's me versus her. Like, why isn't it me versus any of those other men? I think that's what it is. It's like, because there's only room for one.
Yeah,
right.
I get what you're saying. So basically, over the time in society, we've said, there's very little women representation. So therefore, we only picture 4 seats open in an auditorium of 1,000.
Right.
Because we're just like, women have never been allowed up there.
Yeah.
And women have
we should be grateful for the one seat we get, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like, we feel that when we're walking into this auditorium, we're just saying like, hey, there's 4 seats and there's 1,000 of us.
Yeah.
There's no room.
Yeah.
But nobody has really told us, no, there's no room. You can go there, and you can go there. And
what about all the men that are in those seats?
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't you have like one of those seats, right?
Exactly. So maybe that is the competition that we're having. That is a competition because society has led us to believe you really cannot have too many women in power.
Right.
Too many women.
Right. That we should be grateful.
Exactly.
For just that one seat.
Yeah. So
that's what I think.
And I think this is why we're having this conversation, because I want others to understand, like, if you're doing this, if you are a woman who's in a leadership position, kind of like check yourself, like look at yourself and just say, am I uplifting my team?
Mm-hmm.
Or when they do something that's better than I would have ever done it, do I feel a certain way?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do feel jealous, you do feel mad, you do all of that, I feel like you should check yourself, because you might be that toxic woman leader.
Start looking inside and decide. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game, right? There's not only so much power or experience to go around. There's room for everybody, and we have to be considering the other women who are going through the same, sometimes more, struggles than we did. And how do we help elevate them, amplify their voices, and create space for them in a place where typically it would be us versus them, right?
So what would you recommend? What would you recommend for us to do to be able to kind of level that out? Like, what would you recommend if you are a woman starting off in the career space? Just, hey, I've never had a job. I'm going to start getting a job. I'm going to start being a professional.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend for them when they start and they're reporting into a woman leader?
I think that you try to keep the conversations as candid as you can. I think you can be very clear and vulnerable about your goals. Because I think that when you create a space for transparency and honesty, I think that there's comfort in that, and no one thinks you have an ulterior motive. But I think the responsibility is also on men to create that space and not make it feel like, well, there's only going to be one, right?
Yeah,
so you've got to figure out who it's going to be. That's I feel like the responsibility is on all of us at that point. And then, if you're just starting out in your career, the thing that you just called out in the beginning of this is that you started building your circle, like your community of support of women who genuinely cared about your success. They don't have to be the ones that are going to call you all the time. They're not going to be, but they are going to be the ones that are going to be there when you need them.
Yeah.
Or, can, I think, listen when you need to just kind of like talk through something. If you don't have that network, it's going to be tough.
I think that's really good advice, because I feel like I have found my circle, my community, and it just continuously keeps on growing by letting down my guard, by kind of showing up and being myself and then gauging them. Do you, and this is in my personal life.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be that effective in my professional life. I don't think if it would be that effective, when I come in and I have a female CPO or CHRO or anything, or if I have a female CEO or COO, whatever it is, a female leader, I don't think I could come in and be 100% vulnerable, because if we're talking about corporate, we're talking about all of these things, it might take that person back. And there are some women who just expect that. There are some women who would just be like, you got to get with it. I'm sorry. That's just the way things are. Right. So there's a lot of us, I feel like we're kind of divided. There's a bunch of us who just like, I just want to uplift one another. We just want to make sure that we're good, we are represented, we're in the seats that we deserve, and they are just that supportive community. And then I think on the other side, we have the women who are kind of like, nope, this is how corporate has always been. This is how, business has always been. I'm so sorry. You need a tougher skin. You need to, and they're just okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're just okay with
the way it is,
the way things are,
because they got their seat, and that's okay.
Because they got their seat.
All you can do when you interact with them, because you'll see them, we see them still, is not take personally and know who you are and be true to who you are. And I think just as long as your character is, you can't let it bother you. It sucks, but you can't let it bother you, because that person likely would have been that person, whether they were man or female. They're just the kind of person who is out for themselves.
Yeah. So I want to know, like, what's going on in your mind when, like, for example, you told me that when you first hired me, you saw that I had strengths that you necessarily didn't have, and that I was able to we were able to kind of like plug in and play, and just be able to say, okay, we really do complement one another.
Yeah.
That's different, right? That's very different than what I have experienced when I, coached my executives or coached some of my mentors, where they're like, I don't want someone that's better than me at these things, because they're just going to surpass me. They're going to do it.
Yeah.
So, like, how did you manage when you were interviewing me, or you're just interviewing, now in your job, and you start seeing these women and you're just like, shit, they're better than I am. Like,
I'm actually okay with it.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't elevate in a different role if somebody can't do my job. I don't know if you know who gave me that advice, that I have since, from that, hearing that, thought, oh my gosh, if you're not good, I can never grow here or move on, because I'm going to be stuck here doing the same stuff all the time. So I think that's the approach too, is like, you want somebody to come in and be just as good, if not better than you, because then people will be like, good, now we can promote you to this level, because you have this person behind you ready to take, gosh, can you imagine, like, only wanting to do your job for the rest of your life? How boring is that?
It is.
How vanilla are you? Like, grow up.
Yeah. Grow up. So no, it's the same thing that happened to me. So my team that I had in the last organization, I was so happy that they were all better than me.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm neurodivergent. I didn't know it at the time that I was neurodivergent. So I really wanted to, like, okay, we're doing this strategy. I had this type of, initiative that I want all of these things. And I had my right hand person, my HR manager, who would kind of make it all make sense.
Yeah.
And she was fantastic, because I would just be like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what it is. And this is the initiative that
she could synthesize it. And then you were like, oh.
Yeah. And she was so fantastic at it. And I was like, oh my God. And I would tell anybody any day, like, she's better than I am.
Yeah.
Like, she is way better than I am. And then I would talk to, like, my talent acquisition specialist and everything. And I would be like, oh, well, what about this in our process? And I don't know where they'd be like, well, I don't know, because this is what's happening in the market. I'm like, love that, right? Like, it kind of freed up my time to be able to focus on the bigger things and really trust my team that's under. So
it's magic when that happens, right? Magic. That's what it was when I brought you on. Is like, you saw around corners in a way that I couldn't. I was just in the weeds so deeply, and you saw around corners, and I was like, she's it. Like, she's it. Like, that's it. Like, we knew, like, the minute we met you, like that, when you find that, if you stifle it, suppress it, or don't hire this person because of your own ego, you're an idiot. You really are.
You're setting, like, the company behind so far.
Yes.
And
yourself,
because then you have to handhold, and then you're constantly having to stop doing your job to help this person that you hired, because you're just like, oh, well, they're not as good as me.
Alphabetize
it was hard, right? It's hard to be a woman today, overall, in general. And I sometimes, like, this was such a controversial topic, because in the very beginning, when I was talking about podcasts, I was like, well, I want to talk about this. I know I necessarily want to talk about this. I even had it, like, in my notes, and I had you, and I said, Cheryl needs to come with me. But I was not expecting it to be, like, my 6th episode. I was expecting it to be, like,
down the road.
Yeah, like, season 2. And, like, I don't know if this is how this would ever land.
It's because
it's hard, because you have these women who are sometimes like, how dare they? They're just putting us more behind on women empowering women. And it's like, no, but we have to call it out. We call men out all the time. Yeah. We call men out on their shit all the time.
As we should.
As we should. But I think we also need to call each other out and hold each other accountable.
I agree.
Like, you're not being great. Like,
yeah.
You're not being your best self. And not only that, but there's someone that's looking up to you that you're treating like shit. And then that person is going to be impacted by that.
Everybody beyond that is impacted by that. And not even just in that little moment. And I'm actually, this is not a different topic. This is the same thing. I know my brain is doing like, I'm learning. So the last month starting on TikTok, this is like very new for me. And I have gone so far down the rabbit hole of Black TikTok and like learning about my whiteness and the privilege that I have and the way that I operate and the way that I unknowingly say and do things that would set like women of color, Black women behind. I had like literally no idea. So if you're not calling out and saying it, I'm not going to know. The other women aren't going to know. And it's not their work to do. And maybe it's not our work to do as women to tell other women. But if we don't,
it's not comfortable.
It's uncomfortable to talk about. And if somebody's not saying something, it's just going to keep going down that path. So it's all we're doing is learning. And if somebody sees, if a woman leader sees this, or a direct report who has found themselves feeling catty or competitive unnecessarily, this is a moment. You can turn the corner in this moment and make the choice to just do the right thing and just keep pushing, and then find the circle of people who are going to keep uplifting you without the ulterior motives or needing something back from you.
Yeah. And I think that once we get to those seats, once we finally reach the top of the ladder, which is not as glorious and as people make
it's a whole other nightmare.
It's a whole other nightmare. Like, I think once we reach that top of the ladder, that C-suite, we're kind of looking around, and there's some women who are kind of like, oh, I need it. Now I need to sit quiet, and I need to do everything that they're telling me to do, and I need to follow all of these things because I'm so lucky that I got here. Like, I was part of a company who most of the leaders were women.
Yeah.
We had zero of a voice.
Wow.
And I wasn't part of that C-suite, but I was right under. And I would just say, like, how do you have so many women in such a high seat, but you're not giving them a voice?
Mm-hmm.
You're not listening to them.
So what's the point of them even being there?
What is it? Is it just you
Optics.
saying, yeah, like,
is what it feels like.
Saying like, oh, of course, we have a bunch of women and are Hispanic women. And I was looking around and I'm like, I am the only Hispanic person here in the whole company.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is it that you get to that point as a woman? And then you start being like, okay, I'm going to let things happen because I'm so lucky to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where me and corporate and me and all of these things kind of just don't match.
The traditional sort of workspace. I think. Yeah.
Because like, I want to get to that seat, but I also want to be able to shine the light. I want to be able to shine the light on like, nope, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Or nope, why did you hire
the meaningful impact, and know that you're trusted in that space and not going to be ostracized because you happen to be a female and now you're noisy or you're emotional or all the things that. Yeah.
I remember I was part of that. We had one, and I love her to death. I support her. We had an employee, and she was coming back from maternity, and one of our C-suite men decided to call her irrational and emotional. And I read the letter, and I was looking at it, and I was like, there's no way this came from her. There's no way this came from a C-suite. And she was like, yeah, it did. And I was like, what do you, as HR, I was like, what are you going to do? Like, I need to know what your next steps are. Please don't sue us. Like, I was just like, okay.
Just feeling her out, like taking the temperature, like.
I was like, okay, so like, I'm sorry that happened to you, but what do you know? And I had to have that uncomfortable conversation where I was like, hey, no, cut it out. Like, this is not the way that you do things. So not a lot of women are willing to have such uncomfortable conversations with men in power.
Yeah.
A lot of them would just be like, well, I don't want to get fired, or I don't want repercussions, or I don't want this, and I don't want that. And it's kind of like, no. You got there. Now you can actually make the pathway. How did you get there and actually be able to make the blueprint for other people? And we're not talking now about women. We're talking about underrepresented, people. We're talking about all types of people, including men. Mm-hmm. Sometimes men of color. Men of color sometimes get really shitty reactions and get really shitty biases. Yep. And they don't talk about that enough. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a man of color, so I can't
speak for that from that perspective.
Right. And there's a book that's called Inclusion on Purpose. And it talks about how white women have the glass ceiling, but women of color have a concrete.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Because it's sometimes like you're looking at it and you're just saying like, oh, there's a woman. And I think I talked about this. And the other day I was venting to one of my friends and I was like, I had this conversation and it went really bad. And she said, well, you kind of went in guns blazing. She kind of gave me that constructive feedback. And I said, you're right. But, you know, this person and this person. And I remember calling out Brene Brown. I remember calling out Mel Robbins and all of these things. And I'm like,
all the women I look up to, by the way.
I look up to, right? Yeah. But the thing about me is that I'm not
history. So who do you look up to in that capacity?
Like, who am I looking up to? Like, I'm sure that there are many out there, but that's who I looked up to unknowingly. I wasn't like, let me go find a Hispanic.
You don't have the same privilege as a white woman in that position.
Right? I literally told her these words and I said, I just realized that I'm looking up to women who are telling me to go in guns blazing, but they were born with a bulletproof vest.
Oh my God, I've got goosebumps. You're so right. There are things that I could say as a white woman that you could never say.
I could never say.
We could say it in the exact same way with the exact same tone. And because you are your background and you are you, they would interpret it differently. Yeah. It's scary and insane.
It's scary because I still look up to them.
Yeah.
You know, I have their thing, you know, Kim Scott. I love Kim Scott. And I look up to all these women and, you know, now I'm starting to kind of diversify like the way that I'm reading, like different authors, different women leaders and everything. But as a Latina, like this should have been something that I realized. This should have been something that I said, let me look at my books. There's absolutely zero women of color in my, like, that wrote any of the books that I'm reading, except Inclusion on Purpose and Quick Confidence.
Wow. Yeah.
All I'm doing. So I'm just trying to find, and that's kind of what made me do this podcast where I was kind of like, I want to be that person. I want to be that person where I don't care what your age is. I don't care what your gender is. And I want to be that person who you're just kind of like, wow, there is representation and there is unfiltered representation. And there is this girl or woman, not girl. There's a woman who, by the way, they called me lady the other day. And
isn't that like shocking? I know. The first time someone says lady or ma'am, it's traumatizing.
I almost passed out. It was embarrassing.
Yeah. I have to be like, I'm not a lady. And then I'm like, yeah, I am. Like, I'm 40. I'm a lady.
I never thought that I wanted to square up and fight a 5-year-old more than I did in that moment. I was like, lady, you know, now I lost my train of thought. But it's like, I want to be that. Okay, so I want to be that
they can look up to.
Yeah, that they can look up to.
I want to be like you. Yeah.
Like, you know, sometimes I dress how I dress. And they're like, well, it's your podcast. Is that how you like normally dress? I'm like, no, if I'm going to a board meeting, I actually dress up nice. I don't always look like a troll. But also, yeah, I have been in C-suite. I have held all those executive titles.
You have tattoos. Like, you're a normal human,
exactly.
Right? Like, yeah.
And like, I sometimes forget words, and I have, you know, I'm neurodivergent, and like all of these things. I want people to know that, and I want people to see that, and just be like, yeah, she had that tea, and she still has that tea, and I still coach executives and everything. But there's so many uncomfortable conversations that need to happen, and they're just not happening enough. They're just, and it needs to happen more. And there needs to be more calling out and more, you're doing this wrong.
Acknowledgement of it. And then I think the fixing is the bigger part for us, right? Too. Like, we have to figure out what work we can do. Because it starts with us, right? If we decided today we're starting the conversation, then you asked the question already. So now I have to go home and research, oh shit, how do I start doing the work to start undoing this tangled mess that we've created, that society has created?
Yeah.
And then how do we then start holding those around us accountable to the same, you know, give them the same responsibility in this?
And I think we start here with my 31 subscribers.
Let's do it. Are you guys paying attention?
I think
You're taking notes.
No, I think it does start here. And I think your TikTok, you know, I look at it and I'm just like, she's so good because you're so good at like giving the points right away and like being relatable and saying like, oh my God, like she's also a C-suite. She's also been part of board meetings. She's also been in front of all these things and just human.
Oh
like
gosh,
you have flaws. I have flaws. Everybody has flaws. Unless I ask Allie. Allie thinks she has no flaws. You know,
Allie's perfect.
Allie's perfect. So,
well, you know what they say? You just do everything with the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Yeah.
And like, imagine the rocket ship that takes off at that point. Like, you know what I mean?
The quick confidence that I told you. I would
Incredible
listen
book.
to it. Is it by Selena Rizvani?
She commented on my LinkedIn. I was like,
cry. Did she?
I was dying. I said, I am fangirling right now. Maybe she'll watch this.
I would. Oh my God, Selena Rizvani. Like I listened to her audiobook for Confidence when I was applying for roles that I didn't think that I was qualified enough for, and then when I sat down and I heard what they were expecting me to do, I'm like,
I could do that in my
sleep
like
20 times.
Yeah, geez.
And I remember I was listening to her, and she was such a voice. She's a woman of color, and she was such a voice of empowerment. Mm-hmm. And she was I love her so much. I've never met her. I'm not a hugger, and I hope she is, because the day that I meet her,
you're going to attack her.
I'm just going to hug her. But
just the way she sort of allows you to give yourself, your own self, permission to just
be yourself. Like just show,
and that's good enough. Yeah. And that's actually just good enough. That's perfect. Like
I listened to it where there was like a part where that's literally what she said. She said, just be yourself. And it was,
you're like, huh?
I was like, I've never,
what? Like me?
Have
you met me?
Yeah. Have you spoken to me yet? Like, no, like, and I'm hearing her, and I remember I would just turn off the car and I would breathe. I'd be like, okay. And I would channel my inner white man.
We should name our inner white man.
I would channel my inner white man, and I would walk in, and I was like, I own this company.
Well, there's a lot to be said for body language, right? And so a colleague of mine, my CEO right now, he talks about body language too. And he's a white man, and he talks about, and he's a tall white man, and so he talks about taking up your space and the way that you.
I hate that I immediately like went up when you said
that. Maybe that's what it is. She talks about in her book too. Just body language and how you even just carry yourself in a room, and it changes your mindset. It will flip a switch in your head. Like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. I take myself seriously, so they're going to take me seriously.
Yeah. And I did that. And I was like,
did it work?
I think so. I mean, they left me. I still talk to them. Did I get hired? No. But
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But
yeah, that's the other thing is like, even if you don't get hired, like you never know what that means, what the relationship means, what the conversation, where that conversation will go, the network. So you can't lose faith.
And I still have connections with them, and they've opened up a lot of doors for me. But I remember walking out and me knowing, like, after I got the feedback that I didn't think I would get, but after I got the feedback, I remember calling Allie and being like, I'm so disappointed that I didn't get the job. Fuck yeah, I sat there, and the C-suites loved me, and the CEO loved me, and the founder loved me, and like,
how'd you know?
How did I not?
I think I heard
Yeah. It was women.
Competition, and
and it was then it was men, a man who sat in front of me and said, this is why.
There are other women who do not think you should have this.
Oh my God, seat. Exactly. I know I said I like channeled my inner white man, but it was kind of like channeled my inner white man, but it was me, and I was just calm, relaxed. I was just sitting down in the chair, and I was calm and I was comfortable. And what I needed to remind myself is, they need an HR person, which means they probably know zero about HR. I am the professional in the room. I am the expert, and I need to act like it. I can't walk in and just be like, oh, No, I'm about to run your entire culture and people operations. That is my expertise. That's why you're hiring me for it, and you need to be able to see that from me. And I don't care how much companies you own, or how much of a CEO you are,
how much money you have, whatever,
or if you flew in here with your private jet,
your helicopter,
your helicopter. I don't care. It needs to be that type of thing where us as women, we need to show up as ourselves.
Yes, yeah.
And we need to start channeling the inner white man, and we need to start saying, like, I'm going to channel my best self.
And know that you're enough.
And my expert.
That's what it is. Yeah, this is like, you don't have to be any better version than what you already are. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I think that this is where we start. I think where we start is talking more about it, calling more people out, whether it be a man or woman, it doesn't matter. Like, you need to call more people out when you're doing something wrong. And, your voice is going to shake. Like, it's going to shake. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be like, oh my God.
It's a muscle, though. Yeah. You build that muscle, you're going to be much more confident every time you have that conversation. It gets easier. So just keep doing it.
So just keep doing it. And I mean, and TikTok, I think you're doing a great job at it. And, and I tend to ramble. So YouTube is my thing. It's my jam.
You're good at it. This is fun.
TikTok, I'm going to try.
You're doing great. And you look really good on your TikToks, too.
Not according to my mom.
Mothers are harsh critics sometimes. The amount of time, Odette's mom, the amount of time she spent brushing her hair before this was
a long
I was
time.
like, you're going to have to stop brushing. We're going to have to get started. She makes you proud.
I felt like I was going back to dance practice. I was like, there could not be a hair.
Like all the flyaways.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, she's going to look at it. She's going to zoom in. She's going to be like, there's one
See
hair
that one?
out of place. Oh, she's not going to find it. But definitely say again. But yeah, I mean, even like my mom, you see, like it's the way that they think. Like with my mom is like, you're out there. You're supposed to be like, you know, you're an executive. You're supposed to have this persona. And my mom is, she doesn't think that different. Like, and I had to kind of teach her.
Yeah.
And she was open to it.
Yeah.
She was like open to it. Like, I never thought about it that way. She's like, I never, and I was like, I want to be myself. And if I'm not enough for someone, that's okay.
I do see this a lot with moms where there's a lot of pressure on especially daughters because I think there's such an expectation. Like they see so much potential in you and they want you to be this version of you that they always saw. And really, again, you're good enough the way you are. Like you're great just the way you are. And everybody loves you for the way you are. And I'm sure she does too. I think she probably also is thinking like, it would be so much better if, but really, like I mean, the world's not asking for that. They want you.
Because she grew up, and you know, she grew up with the sense of like, you have to show up, you have to be softer, you have to be nicer, you have to wear stockings, and you have to wear like kitten heels, you have to wear like all of these things. Like she's from a different generation than I am. And I feel like the more we talk about it, the more generations we're going to be able to reach, and the more they're going to be able to know there is a huge gap that is happening. Because as HR, we know all the tea, right? We know everything that's going on in between, you know, behind the scenes. We know all of these different things. And I sometimes when I talk to other women, they're like, I never thought about it that way. I didn't know that this was happening. And it's like, okay, well, I'll start talking about it. Am I going to get canceled? I don't know. Did I just invite you to be
an episode?
Did I just invite you to an episode?
The suspense is killing me.
Just invite you to an episode that we're both going to get canceled? I don't know. But it's the fun part. And I think it's for everybody out there right now, you're having two women who are both successful, have both sat in the very top of the ladder, but you also have two women that continuously support one another. Like I always want what's best for you. I always want you to, and I'm like, how do I do that? How do I help? And other times, like I call you and I'm like, I need you to get me and what's going on in my head. Like help me, be my mentor, you know, all of these different things. And I want people out there to know it's like we're dressed different, we look different, but we're so alike. And never have we both felt it's a competition. We've even applied for the same jobs before. Yeah. And we've both like talked about it.
I've been like, you should hire her. Like she's really good.
Or like other times I'm like Cheryl would be really
that's good. Like the same thing. Yeah.
So, and I do that. I think the overall message is there's room for all of us. And I think the more we understand that and the more that we speak about that, the more we're going to inflate, and the more that like the community of women is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is how we make space in the auditorium.
You're right.
Like you show up for a woman. Like if a woman's on stage, you're going to be like, I'm going to show up. I don't care how many seats there are. I'm going to show up. And if we continuously do that, even if
they have to bring in seats for us, at that point, they have no choice.
They have no choice. What do? Have them standing? No, girls. You know, and even men like need to start supporting women more. They need to start showing up more. And don't give me your advice. Don't tell me your feedback. Just show up, be happy for me, and actually support what I am doing. And
amplify my voice. Create a space for me so I can be the best version of myself. I'll make you proud. I'll show everybody. Yeah. And then you won't have to do that after so much time, right? But I think it's their responsibility too, because they've created this world. It's their responsibility to then start making space for us.
Yeah. And like men, by the way, out there, don't just, if you're in a meeting and there's a woman who keeps getting talked over and being interrupted and doing all of this, don't just step in and be like, oh, well, I think what she's trying to say. Yeah. No, she was speaking. She was speaking. Yep. Stop it and say, I'm sorry. I don't think Cheryl was done with her point. I don't think that, you know, Cheryl, you were saying something before they started. We'll go ahead and get back to your point in a second. But Cheryl, you were saying something. What is it? That is how you amplify our voices. That is how you give us power. Because if you let everybody talk over us, if you let everybody take away our power, our confidence, we're just going to continuously diminish our own selves. And we're going to be reduced to nothing. I remember I went to a forum and somebody tried to speak for me. And I was like, no, You don't speak for me.
Good for you.
I was like, this is what I'm saying.
Good for you.
I would have never done that a couple years.
That's something that I don't want to say age, but a lot of experience I think does for you. Over time, you start to develop again this muscle of caring or just trusting yourself a little bit more. So for the not younger people, but the people that are coming in with like fresh eyes and not enough experience to really feel that confident, just know that comes with a little bit of time. You just keep training yourself to, just do the hard things. Say the uncomfortable things.
Say the uncomfortable things. Yeah. I mean, like, don't be a dick about it, but like, say the uncomfortable things. But like, also like work on your emotional intelligence. Because did you know that Kim Scott had to kind of have a version 2 of radical candor because people were using it as an excuse to just be assholes?
I didn't know that.
They did. She had to, and she talks about it on her other version where she's like, I think people didn't understand what I was saying. So a lot of people took it as, I'm going to just be candid and I'm going to be so honest, but there was no productiveness behind it. Mm-hmm. And she had to actually not rewrite, but she actually, you might have rewritten it, where she was like, I don't think people got my point. Like, you can
let me try this again.
Like, you can be radically candid and effective and not rude and not disrespectful.
You can do it with tact.
And I was cracking up because in my mind, so many people would
call that book out.
Recommend that book. They would be like, you need to read Radical Candor. And the people that would recommend it, I would be like, did you read it? And they'd be like, yeah. And I was like, well, I don't want to read it because I don't.
You're kind of a jerk.
Yeah, like you're not somebody that I want to be, so I don't want to read it. And then I finally got around to reading the first version, and I thought the same thing. And I was like, people are going to take this, and they are going to use it as an excuse to other people, and then they're going to be like, oh, but it's Radical Candor. No, Radical Candor is I'm going to be effective. Like, hey, Cheryl, like, this is my feedback. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't get that feedback, and then later on they find out by somebody else, they're going to look at you and be like, why didn't you just tell me this? Sure.
Or if you dance around it, it's like, what are you wasting time dancing around this? Just like, this should be honest. Yeah. That's what you're really good at that too. Like, you're really good at being direct and then taking feedback and going with it. Not a lot of people are comfortable getting feedback. They get very emotional about it. But like, you're really good at, I think, hearing something and like, how can I take the positive from this and improve in general, which not a lot of people are. So that's the other piece of it is like, can you deliver direct feedback? Or can you do it in a way with empathy so then the other person doesn't get defensive, or, if they're not receptive, are you in tune with that? Are you emotionally intelligent enough to know when they're ready for this commentary? And
it wasn't always like that. And I think the last feedback I got, who gave me the last feedback I got that I let get to me in such a monumental way. And like I said, this was the pivot of my career, was when it was a female executive with me straight in the eye. And they said, you will never get to be an HR director or higher level because you just lack the confidence. And I remember looking at her and thinking, 1, I didn't ask for this feedback. 2, didn't ask to be an executive or any of that. But 3, bitch, watch me.
Is that what made you? Should you be thanking her right now?
I should be thanking her. I should be thanking her because I was comfortable.
Yeah.
I was comfortable and I was fine where I was at. I loved the company that I was at, and I was comfortable with my title. I was comfortable with everything, and it was just a conversation. Mm-hmm. And out of nowhere, she just came out with this, you will never. Rather than saying, hey, you know what? You're not there yet, but let's work on your presence to get you there. Mm-hmm. It was more of a, you will never get there. And everything in my brain just kind of shut down and said, watch me.
That's tough.
And that happened 1 year, and within 3 months, I was out of that company. Then I became an HR director, and shortly after, I became global head of people operations. And did I know what I was doing? Maybe not all the time. Who
does, honestly? Did you have the confidence of a mediocre white man when you did that?
I had the confidence of my mom. My mom has like a lot of confidence. My mom shows up and she's like, yeah, I can do anything. I had the confidence of how hard can it be?
That's what you got to do. Yeah. We're all just winging it, right?
We're all,
no one knows what they're doing.
And the higher up you get, the more you realize that everybody just doesn't know.
No one knows what they're talking
about. And we're just all looking at each other like, how did you get here?
I just walked in the back door. I think I just walked into.
So no, but I think that was part of the moment where I both hated and started loving that. It was like the moment where she told me that, where I was like, you just fucked up, because like, now I'm really going to be. Did I necessarily always wish that I would climb the ladder or be an executive? No. I could have cared less for it.
Yeah.
I think I would even tell you sometimes, be like, I don't really care for
You did. I think you were very clear. You were kind of like, I don't think I want to be at that level.
No.
Yeah.
And I would just be like, I just want to clock in, like get my life, like just
like move on. Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah.
And it was that challenge. It was a challenge of like, you will never, like you cannot tell me what I will or will not do.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And then everything happened so quickly right after. And it was a lot of thinking or swimming, and it was a lot of treading water. There was a lot of everything. But the team that I got, that was all full of women, saved me. Entirely saved me. And I'm so grateful for them, because they showed me what a true team of women who support and love one another, what we can really do.
Yeah.
So it's been a long road, but I think I'm just proud. I'm proud of all the women. If you're listening to this and you're a woman, I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you for continuing to go out there, continuing to amplify your voice. I want the women listening who are not speaking up. This just means that you're getting started. If you're willing to listen to the uncomfortable conversation, you're not willing to speak up yet, that is okay. You'll get there. You're going to have a moment where you'll get there. And I'm so proud of women for that, because we continuously show up and we continuously break barriers and we continuously do all of these. And we get zero acknowledgement for it. And
sometimes even punished for it.
Like we get punished for it. But we continuously show up. We cry about it. We go home. We cry about it. And then we're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then like the next day.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
You're actually doing more.
Yeah. And the next day I'm like, I'm going to be really good at this. But I just like want to say thank you, because you were such like a pivotal presence for me, because you were right at that moment where I got that feedback and everything changed. But then I still saw you as a mentor. I still saw you as someone who was a good presence in my life. And you never once made it feel like, well, I can't go to Cheryl because, you know, she might want this job, or she might take it from me, or she might, it never felt like so, which is why I'm so excited that you were with me. So
I'm so honored. Yeah. Honestly, I'm so honored. Let's just keep going. Like, how long can we sit here?
You're also local, so that really helps. I don't know how to
Last one.
I don't know how to work this yet to like maybe like be remote. But to wrap up the show, I definitely want to give you like your time. Like, you are doing so many great things now, and you know TikTok is doing great, and like I kind of just like,
oh my gosh,
want you to, you know, shameless. Is it shameless?
Shameless plug.
I was gonna say shamelessly plug yourself.
Yeah, shamelessly plug myself. TikTok has been like a wild ride this last month, but I joined because I thought that there were things that I wanted to talk about that I didn't quite have a place for in a workspace. In the work environment, you can't quite be yourself always, right? And so, do I say my little name? You can,
go ahead.
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. My little username is your culture sucks, and it's essentially it's kind of calling out companies. Yeah, it's being like, you could be doing this better. Like, your employees are telling us that you're terrible at this, and we want to help you fix it. So.
Yeah, culture sucks.
Yeah,
that's it. That's like all I have to say.
That's really it.
So, in the beginning of this, I told Cheryl that my new kind of just wrapping up I would take some inspiration from, you know, Live on the Spectrum, and
great show. Watch it.
I really don't have anything else to say. I don't know if Cheryl has anything else to say.
That's it. Bye.
So that's it. Bye.